And action. All right, I think we're in, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, welcome everyone to the first official episode of the On and Off Topic podcast. I am your, might I say, very fine-looking host who you can't see if you are listening to this on Spotify, Reven Mendoza. And then my amazing other host, Austin Spears, is right nowhere because he will not be joining us today due to some personal dealings, and that's an unfortunate thing. I was really looking forward to what we said we were going to talk about in our little pilot teaser that we did. But it's alright, it's not the end of the world. It's just we're going to have to move the 2025 F1 recap over to next week. And this week, we're going to change it up a little. We're going to have some talks about the NFL season, just recap what's been going on, see what we have to look forward to in week 18, and then we're also going to review Wake Up Dead Man. And also see the political / religious angle that it has. I think that this movie is going to cover both sides of our podcast topics. It's sort of like poetry, so that it rhymes, as George Lucas would say. But anyway, let's get into our first topic, the NFL. This season's I don't want to say that it sucked, but it has been nothing at all like anyone, myself included, predicted, except I predicted the Dolphins would suck. And they sort of did. Then they sort of got better after they fired their GM, but that's different. I don't quite know where to start in how to describe this season. Like, the phrase, it was turned on its head. Well, imagine that the NFL is this person that was turned on its head, but then was also exchanged for another person. And then that person was turned on their head. And then put back up right side, and then was asked to walk in a straight line after all that chaos. That's sort of been like the best I can do to describe this season. There's just been so much going on. So I guess what I'm going to try to do is go over some of the highlights. You can't even do a highlight reel. Like, you have to be there to understand how insane this has been. The craziest news, Chiefs out of the playoffs. That's just hands down the craziest thing, because after nearly 10 years of just dominating the West, dominating / just ruling over it, now they're not even in playoff contention. This is the first time in Mahomes' career that he is not going to go to the AFC Championship. These Chiefs have been very good for such a long time. I think the rest is good for them. I also think that it's a little embarrassing. But sometimes when you pick at the bottom of drafts every year, it becomes hard to keep that dynasty alive. I mean, football, the way they're designed, is supposed to prevent dynasties from being easy to achieve, unlike, some other sports, like the MLB, Dodgers, very rich. But the Patriots dynasty, the 49ers dynasty way back, and the Chiefs dynasty today, those are more impressive because of how difficult they're supposed to be. I mean, the Patriots sort of had a really good time, then they sort of sunk a little, and then they had a rebound. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing from the Chiefs here. They had this really strong showing of about 7 years from Mahomes, and this year, it was just horrible. We could go as high as the 8th overall pick in the draft this year, which is good in terms of draft picking, but, really bad when speaking about how we've done this year. That being said, I think it's a good thing to be able to pick higher for once, maybe twice. I think the next 2 or 3 seasons are going to be probably successful. I don't think we're going to collapse for multiple seasons. Next season might not be too great if Mahomes is injured for too long after he tore his ACL a few weeks back, but I don't think it's going to take that long to come back. The only hiccups that I could see for the Chiefs coming back in strong fashion is going to be Mahomes' recovery, Kelsey's retirement decision, and whether or not the Chiefs can shake things up. I don't think Matt Nagy has been working out as our offensive coordinator, and I think it might be time to move on from him. Maybe bring Eric Bieniemy back. Maybe bring someone who just hasn't worked with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are very stick with their own sort of people type deal. And sometimes you need some new blood. Sometimes that's just good, shake things up. But that's not the only thing that happened with former number 1 seeds in divisions, because the Chiefs, they won the AFC, the entire AFC last year. Yay, that was great. Except Super Bowl 59, that wasn't great. But the Lions also won the NFC last year. And what happened to them? Same thing as us. They are out of playoff contention, didn't win anything, bottom of their division. So this actually is fairly standard for Lions fans. My sympathies. The last 2 years, really good for you. But yeah, now it's time to come back down to earth. Lions have been on a bit of an interesting journey. They were sort of like us in that they started a bit slow and then got really good. And then they've just sort of I wouldn't say fell apart. We fell apart as a Chiefs organization, but the Lions just sort of had a more graceful fall from contention. And that's not the end of the world. I think that they're still going to come back and be very good for the next 2-3 years. I just think that all the players that they have to pay now are going to really come back to bite them. Salary caps don't tend to be an issue for the first 2-3 years. You draft all these young, talented players and they're on rookie deals, and they're really good for your team. After 4 or 5 years, though, all those contracts start to come into play, and that's when things get hard. That's what happened with the Chiefs, paying stars like Mahomes, Kelsey, Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton. Now, we got to pay everyone. And you can't pay everyone, so some players have to go. That's when you get selective, and then that's when you get thinner at certain positions. That's just the way it is. And again, it's part of what makes football competitive. That's what makes it impressive when teams do win for such a long time, like the Chiefs. But speaking of dynasties, guess who's back? The Patriots. The Patriots are 1 seed shy of the top of the AFC, and they could be a real Super Bowl contender. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl? No, I think it's going to be an NFC team this year. But as far as AFC teams go, I think they're better than the Broncos. I think there's a fairly high possibility they're better than the Jags when they're at full power right now. They're still getting better from some injuries, but I think if you had every healthy Patriots player go against all the Jags healthy starters, I think at the very least it would be a very entertaining game. The Broncos, I don't think they're legit contenders. I'm sorry, they win like last year's Chiefs. Too much. And I watched what happened with our Chiefs last year. We had an issue, and we tried to solve it, but it just wasn't enough. And eventually that came back to hurt us. It was our offensive line especially. And I don't think that's necessarily faulting the Broncos. I think they are sort of fraudulent, but for what they've done, it is very impressive how far they've come, which is the nicest thing I'm going to say about the Broncos. Otherwise, I hope that they get a first-round playoff exit. Anyway, looking forward to Week 18. We have a lot of meaningless games. I mean, a lot of these don't matter that much because aside from 2 spots, yes, the 4 seed in the AFC and the NFC, every playoff team has already been decided. You have the Broncos, the Patriots, the Jaguars, the Bills, the Chargers, and the Texans. And then you're going to have the Ravens and the Steelers fighting for the 4 seed in this week's Sunday Night Football game. Which sounds like an entertaining enough match, except the Steelers looked like, the Steelers against the Browns, which is worse because they are the Browns. And that is unfortunate. But that's the Steelers thing. 9-8 record. If it's not a 9-8 record season, then that season is a failure. Poor Steelers fans. But regardless, that should not have been the Sunday Night Football game. I am very disappointed in the NFL. Who made this whole plan for football in Week 18? Because I would like to have a talk with them. Let's just take a look at some of these games. For example, you have 2 very important games on Saturday, which most people don't tend to watch a lot of football on Saturday unless it's the college stuff. I mean, I would have loved to watch the most important game of Week 18, which is the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. When do they play? Saturday night. I have planned Saturday night NFL. What's up with that? You don't want my great publicity? Is that what's going on here? And they're debuting the 49ers rivalry jerseys. If you haven't seen these things, go look them up. They are magnificent. They're beautiful. And I can't see them because I'm busy. Why would you make the most important game of the week one of the first games played? You had Sunday Night Football right there. Instead, we have to watch the Ravens and the Steelers compete for an AFC North title that is the 4 seed in the grand scheme of things. It's not a relevant game, not compared to what is at stake in the 49ers-Seahawks game. That game is not only going to decide who wins the NFC West, it's also going to decide who wins the number 1 seed in the NFC. That is important. Just put that in perspective. Last year, the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions had the Sunday Night Football game for Week 18. Do you know why? It's because the NFC 1 seed was on the line last year. All they had to do was do what they did last year. It wasn't hard. They knew what they needed to do. They just didn't because, I don't know, they are cowards, I guess. They just don't want us to have good football. Look at this. We have the Chiefs and the Raiders at 3:25. No one wants to watch the Chiefs and the Raiders. Even with our 3rd string QB, I'm sure we're better than Geno Smith. But still, That's not good football. That's not something anyone wants to watch, especially with Week 18 being so meaningless for a lot of teams. A lot of teams are just resting their starters at this point. Even Phillip Rivers is not playing. Phillip Rivers coming out of retirement being one of the craziest things to happen this season. But not the most recent crazy thing to happen. We had 2 Patriots stars get charged with assault, which that could really hurt them, especially with Stephon Diggs being such an important part of their offense. But don't make dumb choices, I guess. That's what I keep saying about these NFL players. They're very talented, but talent is only going to get them so far. But, what do I know? Moving on! This is the part of the video where you would have an advertisement, except we are not very well known, and so we do not have any ads to show. Therefore, you should tell your friends and folks to go watch our podcast on YouTube and listen to it on Spotify. Go and subscribe to all of that. That way, we can have some monetization. Have some people give some ads to us, and we can make a little money. That'd be nice, right? So, tell everyone about us. We'd appreciate it. Austin would appreciate it too if he were here. He might even smile. That'd be great. Anyway, our next subject, we're going to have the entertainment / also the politics and religious section. Because Wake Up Dead Man, I think, covers so much at once. That's actually a very good thing to do. I'm going to lead with, did I like the movie? Yes, I loved this movie. It was so fun. I don't know quite how you could dislike this movie. Like, I watched a Ben Shapiro review on it just to see what he thought, because he doesn't tend to like the Rian Johnson movies. That doesn't just include the Knives Out movies, that's also The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson is a bit of a controversial, polarizing director, because he does make some choices that are genuinely baffling. The Last Jedi, well, I didn't like it personally. I do think that it tried to be its own thing. Was that thing good? Probably not. But do we admire the effort? Yes. And admittedly, the humor was sort of this dry, snap sort of humor. And I don't know, I thought it was a nice little change of pace. But anyway, now we get on to his latest movie, Wake Up Dead Man. Another installment in the Knives Out series. It should be called the Benoit Blanc series, but Netflix just needs the Knives Out in the title to have it be name recognition, which I don't get. Everyone loves Benoit Blanc. You have to peel back the many layers of this immense glass onion. But, I don't know, there's just something so fun about his accent, Everyone loves to do that. But anyway, that's just me. This movie, I think the first place I'm going to start with is just the design. Because the other 2 movies have had nice aesthetic choices, I think. The mansion, it was a nice mansion. It's the best mansion for a murder mystery I've seen since Clue back in the, 70s? I think it was. But then you had Glass Onion on the island, and it's an island. It's a nice island, I guess. But then you have Wake Up Dead Man. And you know what they do here? They get this nice, happy little cathedral. It seems so dreary and dark and foreboding. But I come away with this vibe of colorful imagination. Not imagination. There's just a vibe, okay? There's a vibe, y'all. And I don't even like the word vibe, but I'm going to say it because it's just, I don't know. Catholic churches. Go to a Catholic church. Then you'll get what I'm talking about. There's just something so unique about seeing them filming here. And I think the camera work is actually better in this movie than it has been for the other 2. To add on top of that, add to the fact, the design of the pulpit or whatever that Monsignor Wicks speaks from, lovely. The color red. Everyone knows that the color red is a very important color. But I think it's used very well in this movie, because the color red. We have to rank movies by how they use that color. I'm also going to give a shout out to the performances, because Josh O'Connor, I think, is a really good up-and-coming actor. I don't know where he got started. I think he just sort of popped out of the blue for me in the movie Challengers. My best friend, she also loves that movie. I think she wants to be that sort of woman, which might be a little problematic, but I'm sure it's nothing. He's just good in whatever I see him in, which has only been 2 things, but if I had a nickel for every time I saw a good Josh O'Connor performance, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it'd be interesting to think about. I don't know, there's just such a sincerity, not just to him and his performance, but also to the movie in general. Benoit Blanc, unsurprisingly, is not very religious. He's like a devout heretic, I think is what he described himself as in the movie. And yet, that being the case, and comparing that to this strong, young Catholic believer, O'Connor's character, they still work very well together. There's a respectful dialogue of sorts, and I appreciate it. For a guy that seems as liberal as Rian Johnson does from his other works. I just feel like there was just some level of respect in how a lot of this was portrayed. Was it complete? No, but I felt there was a lot more effort in this movie than I've seen from his other stuff, which was impressive, especially after Glass Onion, which most of it was admittedly not very good. If you watch it just as like a comedy, then Glass Onion is great. It's wonderful. It's hilarious. As a murder mystery, it's probably not. Wake Up Dead Man probably was... I mean, it's definitely better than Glass Onion. I like it better than Knives Out. I think some people are going to like Knives Out better because of the subversion that it offered, but in a world where that subversion from Knives Out came several years ago at this point, it's nice to just sort of go back to something that's a bit more reeled back, a bit more classic in terms of murder mystery. And I think that also works to its advantage in the fact that it is the third movie. I don't know if it's going to be just this as a trilogy or if they're going to make a fourth one. I think they're going to. These tend to be pretty successful. And since it's so successful, you should probably release it on Blu-ray so that people like me can buy it. Netflix, you cowards. But anyway, there's probably going to be a fourth movie that comes out. However, if the Knives Out series ended with Wake Up Dead Man, I think it would be the rare occurrence of finishing with your strongest movie being your third movie. Like Star Wars didn't do that with Return of the Jedi. Their strongest was Empire Strikes Back. Godfather didn't do that. Godfather Part 2 was the strongest. Generally, it's either going to be the first movie. It was great. It was so great. And then all the other ones were just attempts to follow up. Or first one was really good, but then the second one just brought it up to a whole nother level. But no one really says that the third movie is the best. Like, not even with Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight movies, which I like Dark Knight Rises the best, but objectively, I know it's the worst. It's just so refreshing to see that the third movie, like, he's enhancing what he's done from the other two. And I think this idea of this impossible murder that's described in the movie is actually portrayed very, very well, because I was very confused the entire movie. So it's just something that I guess I just don't see a whole lot, you know? The stakes were raised efficiently. Benoit Blanc was not just there, but they waited to use him. They brought him in later in the movie, and it's to the film's credit. He still has plenty of screen time, and his scenes with Josh O'Connor's character, they're great. All the characters are great. Well, all the main ones. Him and O'Connor, and then Glenn Close and Josh Brolin, their characters, very well done. All the other side characters, I don't think they're developed quite as well as in Johnson's other movies, but strangely enough, I don't care, because the four characters that do get the emphasis, I think that helps them get developed better, and helps to further describe what this film is trying to talk about, because Rian Johnson's films aren't really just about murder. That's sort of his thing. He doesn't just want it to be your classic Hercule Poirot or whatever murder mystery. He's also trying to say something with his stuff. Usually it's some more liberal idea, and you could make an argument that this one was no different. However, like I said, one of the things that I appreciated most about this movie was this more sincere tone, at least to me. And that's where it comes down to, what is this movie trying to say? And to me, we have this idea of just complete far-right religious craziness. This whole, you are condemned, woe is you, holier than thou sort of idea. And I do believe that that is something that happens. Maybe not for the majority of Christians, but I don't think it's wild or controversial to say that it does happen in our world. I mean, there's like 8 billion people. It'd be weird to say that something couldn't or doesn't happen. So I think it is good to say, hey, this idea of religion is not to beat people down. It is to bring them in, to say, well, maybe not religion in general, but Christianity at least. It's like O'Connor's character says, we're not here to fight the world, we're here to bring them in, open arms to them. I don't want that idea to be misconstrued as it doesn't matter what you're doing with your life because, you know, God just loves you all. Because God does love everyone. That's not up for debate. But sometimes there's a time and a place for, you know, don't be doing this, it's bad for you. And then sometimes there's just, you need to be there for someone. I think it's all about the context of who the person is and what situation you're in. And most importantly, there's this idea of don't judge lest you be judged that goes out in the world a lot. And that legitimately does mean, like, don't judge. Don't be over harsh, in a way. If that makes sense. this would be much easier if I had Austin, y'all. Let's be real. He's usually the one to reel me in if I say crazy stuff, and I don't think I'm being too crazy, but these are some big ideas. That's all I'm saying. And this idea that driving people away because of their sin is unhealthy it's absolutely true, because everyone does do bad things. Everyone has things they're ashamed of and not proud of. And the best way to bring them in is probably not by furiously yelling at them about it and just saying that they are an abomination. Even if their sin is wrong, that's not the best way to go about it, is all I'm saying. So correction is important, but judgment is not. And I hope we make that point clear. That being said, it also sort of turns me to the one criticism I have, not just of this movie, but of Rian Johnson as a Knives Out director in general. Because this problem isn't just with Wake Up Dead Man, it's Glass Onion, it's Knives Out. It's usually that the more conservative people are generally portrayed as bad people. I mean, like our influencer in Wake Up Dead Man, Monsignor Wicks, all the Catholic people. They go from being portrayed as misguided to, like the bad guys, basically. And then you have Glass Onion, where the bad guy is the millionaire, billionaire, I don't know. And then you have Knives Out, where the bad guy is Chris Evans. Yeah, I don't know about that. Usually it's like the rich guy, I feel like. I was actually surprised when it was Glenn Close at the end, because I was like, subversion? Maybe he was trying to subvert himself by the end of this one. Who knows? I still feel like he is a general distaste toward conservative ideas. I mean, that's his opinion. He's free to it. I feel like with as good of a job as he did is to not be fully anti-Catholic, because I think he was trying to be respectful for this religion that he was portraying in the film. I just wish that there was that level of, we want to give it the same respect and space to breathe towards the more conservative ideas. And that's just me. And it's not my movie. It's not my choice. He can do as he wants, and I still like the movie in the end. I still think it's a top 10 movie of the year. But, probably not number one. Definitely not number one. I mean, we got so many movies to talk about next week. It's not going to be real. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on Wake Up Dead Man, sort of the religious ideas behind it, and how Rian Johnson did overall, and how the cast did. And then we also had the NFL season. I think it was a relatively good start to our podcast at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, Austin not being here was definitely a bad thing. But he should be back by next week. And then we're going to have all sorts of fun conversations, get more off topic, live up to the name. Until then, I am Reven Mendoza, and it was great to talk with all y'all. If you have any thoughts, please let me know. Any conversation topics that you want us to cover, that's what we're here for. We need the ideas. We're still trying to figure out what to do next week officially. So, with that, this is going to be all we have for today.